So if you follow me on TikTok, you probably seen a couple of videos I did, some little fun I had with a scene from this film. It's a scene that's been popping up on my TikTok a few times during the initial release, and I found them really enjoyable. It's that scene that kind of makes fun, highlights, and also, praises their choreography in the Matilda musical film that came out on Netflix. Oof, when was that? Back in December? Back towards the end of December? Maybe the end of November? Middle of December? I can't remember exactly when it came out. I recall watching it sometime in January when I finally sat down with it. Now, I'm not going to say that I can really relate it to the original story, let alone the original movie, because I'm not going to sit here and tell tales out of school about how I'm not the biggest Matilda fan. I do recall seeing the movie when it was out when I was younger. I don't remember all of it all that well. I do know that all of the stories that I've heard about, like the production and Danny DeVito, all of that stuff, it does make me want to watch it. Maybe I should have watched it before going into the musical version of it, but I didn't necessarily think it was. I didn't think it was something I needed to do, because it's not necessarily trying to live up to anything else, because I don't recall the original being a musical. So this is kind of trying to be its own thing, and it does a really, really good job at it. It does a tremendous job at being a very enjoyable film. I do have a little bit of a guilty pleasure for musicals, and being that this kind of feels unique in that capacity, I do find the enjoyment in it. And especially, the songs are good, the musical numbers are good, the story is really good, and it's really entertaining. So I can't talk to anything else but what this film has to offer. So that's all I'm really going to talk about, and not really compare it to its predecessor or the story it's based off, which is Roald Dahl's Matilda. So just going into this movie blind from that perspective of the story and its history, it has a good pace. There are some, things that I do recall from the original that I feel, were definitely more accentuated. Like the cake eating scene was great. A lot of the stuff that Mrs. Wormwood does is very much so, I think, a little bit more heightened in this version than in the original. Granted, the actress who played Miss Wormwood in the first one was definitely a lot more menacing than, when you realize that Miss Wormwood is played by Emma Thompson. Though it's played extremely well, it is definitely, I feel, a little dialed down, simply because, in the 90s, you might have felt like you were able to get away with a little bit more. But again, this is just going off of my memory of everything. But Emma Thompson's great in it. Lashana Lynch is great, who plays the teacher. The entire backstory of that, relationship is really something I was not fully expecting. And when it came to turn, it was kind of like a nice little twist where it was like, oh, so this isn't just, little girl musical movie, kind of trying to be Annie, kind of not, which essentially, when you really look at it, it's basically Annie meets Carrie without a lot of the bullying towards the protagonist, where Carrie is a girl with psychic abilities who gets bullied and turns on the school, whereas this little girl is just, sees other people, gets bullied, doesn't like it, and uses her telekinetic powers to fight back. And then it's a musical like Annie, where it kind of shows this turmoil of her and the people she lives with, and how she doesn't feel loved and feel like she's worthwhile like Annie didn't in the orphanage. So that little sort of mix of things kind of leads to a really good story, a really enjoyable story. And I don't really know what else I can say about it besides that it's totally worth sitting through. I really found myself, kind of being open-minded and not really finding much poor things to say about it. And I don't think anybody really has. I think it's kind of gotten its really good praise. I think it's, I don't know, it can't have grossed anything because it's a Netflix original, but I do believe this is one of the other things that they tried putting out into theaters, which I will say is a really dumb move. Like, how is it that you're going to put something in theaters that you are going to, within weeks, put it on streaming services? Like, at least when, like, Black Panther came out, you know, you knew that something like that was going to eventually come on Disney Plus. But it was months before Disney Plus got it. I think, like, almost, like 5 or 6 months. This was, like, 3 weeks. Like, they didn't give it a chance to really do much else. But it is a really, like, a real big triumph of, like, Netflix's ability to, like, kind of grab little pieces of property like this and make something out of it. Even though I'm a big believer in the idea that Netflix is going down, and it has been going down for years. That's just my opinion. I'm not really going to get into that because this isn't an entry about Netflix. This is an entry about Matilda, and Matilda's totally worth it. Even though it's kind of, you know, we're in February and this kind of came in around December. I'm pretty sure anybody who's wanted to see it has seen it already. And I just wanted to do the entry on it because it was on the list of things that I'm kind of backed up on. So trying to catch up and trying to do my entries for things for that I'm really wanted to put on my list and do an entry for. And, you know, Matilda seems worth it because, you know, it's a really good musical if you like musicals.